Atlantic originally?
No, I'm from the Chicago area.
I'm from Wheat.
Oh, Lindy.
All right. That means nothing to anybody else.
Yeah.
It's exciting to me.
What are you gonna play that? I'm gonna play the Allegro from Mozart, 39 first movement.
Okay. Great. Excellent. What are the things that are sort of on your hit list right now? Where are you with this? What's sort of the next things that you're looking to do?
For me, it's like, I feel like I have to either try and be melodic when going through the, when I get to the eighth notes,
Okay.
and lead through that, or kind of just like play them like as nice as I can, like in a more individual way, without like really feeling like the
Yeah. Like you feel like when you go for those like a longer arc or something with the harmonies, you feel like it compromises some consistency. Is that what you're saying? Okay. All right. What else?
When I get to the end of it, I feel like there's a looseness that I need to have in order to do the pivot, especially at the end. That if I tense up at any amount, it just doesn't execute how I really want to.
The physical, like the physicality.
Yeah.
Did you do this?
Yeah. Kind of 2, 4.
Okay. Nice. Yeah, I mean, I think those are both great places to start, kind of similar to stuff that I hear. I mean, I think that with this era, all music in general, but I think that the reason we practice evenness is for skill building. It's like to practice control, knowing that there are little to no moments in music and in our lives as bass players where then that's like the objective. It's like a stepping stone. It's so that if you want notes to go over here, then you have control over the mechanism to do that. You know what I'm saying? So I think that, yeah, I would love a little more of like the lilting quality and a little more outlining some of the harmonies in the beginning. I just feel like as bass players, our knowledge of harmony could basically stop at like an Easter egg hunt for the dominant and just like find the 5, hit the 5, like come away with the 1, just like find the 5s. And if like, I think if you feel that, then all of a sudden it's this like invisible guiding hand of shaping that the orchestra doesn't even know why they're going to and releasing from things. They just kind of feel this propulsive hum, you know what I mean? So I think that like the evenness and the attention to, the evenness and attention to clarity and stuff is really, really beautiful. And so I think you're now totally set up to succeed to just make sure that it's always serving the rest of the orchestra. So it's not only just serving, but really like instigating. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
One more time, just from, why don't we just start from there, or just from the eighth notes, the forte eighth notes? Yeah, nice. So I think that even within one bar, does that make sense? And if these are the things where, when we're practicing music like this, it can seem odd to, it's not something that's always easily eliminable, like eliminating what does your half tempo, 2/3 tempo practice look like and what does it serve? What's the point of it? And for me, like this is what you're installing. And so there's no metronome marking or level of deconstruction once we're back in the material. Like it's one thing if you're working on that kind of evenness, that's one thing. But if we're kind of bringing those skills to the music, then there's no point where I'm not feeling the lilt of that. So I guess my question is, there's a kind of middle step for me between raw evenness and Moto 39, which would be sort of in learning and internalizing and having control over the sort of dynamic gestures of like a general lilt. You know what I'm saying? So I don't think it's fair to, I just think it's not fair for us to say like, oh, I can do it evenly so then I can like do a pace crescendo or diminuendo or some kind of taper. It's like, anytime there's something where if I ask myself, have I practiced this, and the answer is no, it's like, well then, why would I expect myself to be able to do that? So, I mean, can we have a little bit of that on just that E flat? I mean, without breaking it down even further, like, can you just make that a little bit? It's nice. I mean, if I were being like really minute about it, I would hear a lilt a little less like 1, like a 1 and 5, and more like a 3 and 3. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
Because it's I'm looking for that ebb and flow without jaggedness. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
One more time. I'm just going to remove this just because we're so far, we've broken it down. Anyway. Yeah, that's good. I mean, one just sound thing while we're at it. I don't know, we can ask the room to hold me accountable. I'm guessing that my follow through, are the time that we're spending on the string is about the same, you know, like in terms of kind of horizontal spiccato brush aspect. So there's not too much of a floor of that shape, but I think my follow through is a little further than yours.
Lower bottom.
Not lower bottom, but just the energy that I'm putting in, I'm not limiting it from stopping. And so for me, that takes the same volume and the same length, and it just frames it with even more quality to then like fill space. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So a little more follow through. Feel just let your arm and the bow go to where it naturally wants to before like redirecting that energy back in the opposite direction. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's good. It's a little, can you feel your elbow connected to the tip of your bow a little more? I'm seeing a little bit of like, it's a little wristy or a little handy. There's a little bit of this, and at this speed, I'm feeling much more this connection. Does that make sense? Yeah. One other thing is if I see some kind of tip droppage, instead of correcting that here, it's really just, can you come around a little further and then let your body, let your torso kind of just like reposition that? Does that make sense? Yeah. Even more, I mean, I think like, I just naturally, you're just like, you're a slightly more muscular frame than I do, like I'm a littler dude. And so for me, it's like, I just need to maximize, what will I do? to like be even more in front of the instrument. Does that make sense? So can you pretend like you're my size? I mean, like, you know, don't go too far. I just think it has way more quality. I don't know. I just think it has way more quality. So that's sort of in terms of now we've looked a little bit at the mechanism. We've gone back to like installing that quality. Actually, once, can you just do that and now bring it? Can you bring that whole mechanism to the D string just to find that? Use that, the physical and the aural sensation of that as your compass, and make sure you keep that halo as you go to the D string. Okay, one more time, just go toggle between the two strings. This is a great moment for me to thank the Robertsons for the use of this fantastic instrument. So yeah. Razzani, I'm really sorry if anybody's from Italy. Razzani, it's really beautiful, and like on no notice they were like, of course, like take this, so I'm extremely grateful. It's just more dramatic when I do it, and the main thing I wasn't just checking out your sneakers. Like for me, if I were to, when you transition to the D string, if I were to sort of hack off your left arm, I wouldn't necessarily know that you had changed planes. Does that make sense? And so I just think it's so easy for the bass to become an army instrument, and it's not. It's like a torso hip instrument. And so if you just think of like taking your hip bone and putting on the D string much more than getting away with this, which again, it's easier for you to get away with that than me for side rhythms, but it just sounds better the other way. Does that make sense? If it sounded better just to use your arm, I would do that. It's about what it sounds like, but this isn't just about consistency, it's also about like quality. Does that make sense? Yeah. A little more, just to zero in on that. It's not so much up as it is left. Think like C-3PO or like body cast kind of, you know what I mean? Nice. You're hired. Okay. Now, let's, nice. And on no notice, right? Amazing. No, all right. Can we just base, can we base everything that we do around the fives? So what the fives? Yeah. No, yeah, I just mean like, it's going to be that one. It's going to be going here, and then the G is probably the third scale degree as well. Yeah. Does that make sense? So, one more here, one more there. All right, yeah? Think of those threes and threes rather than hitting on the beat, on the downbeats. Can you still see it? Yeah. Okay, yeah, it's already so much better. It's like, it just feels great. The only thing I would look at now, the length of that is much more left hand than right hand. I would think you don't have to be too afraid of like 8/8/8/8 quarter. You know what I'm saying? Like, let's just leave it as it's that. It's also the quality of that is everything you could ever want. Does that make sense? So, slow enough to just really make sure that we're not worried about the evenness, and we're really just thinking about the direction. It feels a little long to me. And the other thing about length is we think of, I'll just say, I frequently think of volume as what is drawing attention to something or as emphasis, but length is also a tool of emphasis. So even if you dim a lot, if it's disproportionately long, it still puts a spotlight on it. And it's still like a 5-1, which is like, it's just, I would much rather, in terms of like listening to, if you were to come play for the symphony or something, there's an audition or sub-audition or something, I would my hierarchy of priorities would be shaping to the harmonies trumps raw consistency every time. Because I'll be like, oh, I flipped it, but it's like, but he had a plan, it was nice. And so I just think in terms of what your importance of installing is, like, that for me is paramount. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So one more time, and one more time. Yeah. Let's go a little more. So then you gotta have somewhere to come away from. You know what I mean? If it's too little, then you have no choice but to hit it. So start from here, just so you have a little more. Okay, so much better. Now how about, there's a little bit where when you lead here, this gets a little longer. Can you think of the crescendoing, or for lack of a better term, the like flowing, dynamic flowing, so the ebbing part comes from, you should see that in increased follow through. Can you like pretend like you have a mute button and you cannot hear me, but you can see my bow? Not my bow, but just the bow. It's so clear what's happening. So can we use your eyes as a little more of a tool? And we should be seeing all the dynamic shapes. It's just that if it's detached material rather than legato or something like that, it's done through follow through rather than active time on the string. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Just again from that E flat. Okay, yeah, I mean, it's such I really think it's excellent. So just because we got the 5 minute, but let's just look at that physical, left-hand physical thing.
Yeah.
Which one is it? Which one?
It's really this one, but then I get stressed out this one.
You start getting stressed about it. Yeah, I can tell you, yeah. What's your fingering here? Yeah. I think that there are a few things about it. One is, this mechanism is more like kind of, again, like if you use the P word, you brought the pivot word into this. But so if that by definition is on an arc that is not just on the trajectory of the board, right? Like that would be like just something really linear, but something pivot, then that motion naturally has a like kind of a rainbow arc, and that's where the sustain comes from, right? Because that's closer than just shifting like that. That's why you're doing it. So that's one part of it, and then the other part of it is that your thumb position should be positioned kind of in between all the areas that you are. So it seems to me like you're a little bit like in this position and this position, which is to me more of a shift than a pivot. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So just slower, and what I want you to feel is when you play that 4, there is all the tension in the world. Not tension like freak out tension, but tension in terms of like palpable suspense of the structure of your mechanism pulling you to that place. Do it slow enough to feel, I want to hear that tension of the, like a thing hold. Just without fib, just because I want you just to kind of like, same thing, but on a should feel the same. It's just that you're kind of throwing yourself a further distance. That's the idea. I mean, in the right hand, can you now do it one more time where it's that speed? Sustain through the B flat, just because I don't want it to be a. Hearing under that. practice that is you're going to expand that interval out from something smaller. So. It should also feel the same even if you're not shifting or not pivoting. Can you do this once? And then I gotta let you go. But do you see the difference? Even though you're in one place, there's even within the frame of one hand frame, there is still that same motion. There is no like finger or arm down to this. Yes. Okay. Now okay. It's not quite as good, but do you feel the difference? The only thing that I really need to let you go is I have a more successful time if I'm going to play it down there rather than is the 4/4 because I can kind of feel that when I start getting like whole step 2/4 and then another, it's just scary to me. You know what I mean? But just mess with it. Man, you sound great, and the way that forte atonal stuff, it's like you have all of the tools of consistency to then serve them for the forces of music. You know what I mean? It sounds great. Beautiful. Are you coming to say like, oh, actually, just kidding? So what do you need to do for a second? Say again? You're not love trouble. Oh yeah, no. Is there any questions about any of that stuff? Well, let him like play a few notes or Dennis Whitaker, everybody. Dennis Whitaker.
There's a recording in Mozart 39 by Charles Mancaris where the double dot that
Is that Prague Chamberson?
yeah, yeah, exactly. And there's so many recordings out now of Bach and solos and styles of things. What do you do as a principal? How do you advise young kids auditioning for orchestras between playing conventionally or playing for character? If you were to hear somebody coming in and auditioning with Mozart 39 double dotting, how do you think the committee would react?
I think a few things. I mean, I think that use conventionality. What was the other one? Character. I mean, I don't. Yeah, I guess my impression. I hope that those are synonyms.
Yeah.
Is like the verbiage I feel about that. But I think that in terms of feeling good about your own product, I think that's the most important thing. I don't usually subscribe to listen, whatever else you're applying for, like try to find as much out about what they're doing and then try to like chameleon that. Like I think that for like very personally, like I think my best product comes from like learning a lot, getting inspired, and then burrowing into like a bunker where I'm like trying to make sure that every decision that I'm making is like honest and true to me. And I think that like I'm just looking for honest music making and like conviction. Like I'd much rather have somebody do something that's not personally the way that I hear it, but that they have a clear decision. And that's definitely, that's how I know our bass section and other string principals I love being on committees with, like at least in Houston, I think for the most part, we try really hard to keep that as our compass regarding hiring. And so I guess if there's a place that doesn't feel that way, I'm not sure it's the right fit. And so I'd rather like, you just kind of want somebody to be like, I got a job, and I just tried this out with myself, and it worked. And like, oh my God, it's amazing. Rather than like, well, I twisted myself into this mangled Frankenstein of what I think they wanted, and then it worked out, and then I have to do that for 40 years, you know? So like, I think the worst thing that could happen is you win a job not being yourself, maybe. I mean, it's probably better than eating butter sandwiches. But like, it's not that much better. I don't know. It's hard. I don't know if that answered any of your question. I think regarding recordings though, like double dotting, anything like that, it's about consistency. Like, all right, wow, they're clearly hearing something they really like, and they're doing it, and like, that's great. And if the conductor asks for something differently, or we ask for something differently or something, then it just shows that their consistency shows me that they can do whatever they want
Right.
at a high level.
Thank you.
I'm awesome, man. Thank you, Dennis. What's up?
Hey.
Steven?
Yeah.
Okay. Where are you from?
I'm from about an hour.
This
east
way?
of here.
Is that like Detroit?
Around like a suburb. of
Okay.
Detroit. Yeah.
My wife's from a suburb.
Oh, which one?
I don't remember. We've only been married 2 years. No, I don't know. No, Andover High School? I don't know. Bloomfield something?
It's Bloomfield.
Yeah. What do you, where are you in school, or are you working, or what?
I'm working. I'm also like kind of like a third year master's. I'm doing like a second master's degree.
Awesome. You working with Nick?
I just finished working with him.
Amazing.
Now I'm working with Professor Bockhurst.
Awesome. Man, I wish I was studying with both of those people.
Yeah.
What do you want to play today?
I'm gonna do. I think I'll do Mammoths 4 first weekend.
Okay. Cool.
So I've been working on that, trying to get. That was one after last recent audition I took. That I was like, this is one. Just want to be able to play randomly.
It's nice to work on that stuff kind of
This is
outside,
good.
on your own time.
Yeah.
All right. All right, so you said that it was, other than it being one that you, I think you said you wanted just as
This is the one that I want to not have to work on a lot for audition, like or something that like I just feel like super, like one of the ones like Beethoven 5 Trio or something that you could just like play out of a hat.
yeah.
Yeah.
Everything's challenging. Everything stays really challenging, just in different ways, I think. You know?
Yeah.
But yeah, I hear you.
Yeah.
So what more specifically, like, what does that mean to you? You talking about like it's about starts or like certain areas of it? Because there's a lot of
It was about starts before. I feel more comfortable with the starts. With the start, I think I don't know. It's kind of like I wanted to first. I wanted to play this one because I wanted to hear you play it.
I'm going to be sorely disappointed. That's so funny. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's especially bold, being like, I'm not going to play, but. No, that's awesome. Yeah, okay. What about it though? Like, what was it that you wanted to hear?
Just kind of like how you wrote.
Yeah, I mean, one thing, that this could be a good one to look at the difference between dynamic and timbre.
Yeah.
I feel a little bit like man, how high is this? Okay. Your starts, your sort of journey from the very beginning to the resulting forte dynamic, right? The repeated notes. That's like, to me, like a dynamic unfolding. And I think that you're using a little more point of contact changes over the course of that. And to me, that's more of a timbral change rather than a dynamic change. Does that make sense? So like your point of contact is about color as well as balancing range or things like that. but it's not so much, I don't think about it as a starting point, a place of the starting of a starting point for the conversation dynamics. So the differences of so maybe I open it up a little bit, but in general, and like I don't stand by that, but like by a lot of that, but like the one thing I'm trying to show you is you can have very soft music that is still in a more, to my taste, appropriate and balanced point of contact. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And that's the thing where, how much, you know, you're in school, you're in an absolutely spectacular music school, so you've got access to all these incredible spaces. Have you done some exploring of recording this type of music in a larger space?
Yeah.
It's like, what were the things that struck you about that?
Generally what strikes me is things need to be more in a larger space, things need to be more off the string. Just like you always think like the difference between articulations, like
Okay. Yeah, I mean, for me, again, I sort of think about it more like in terms of clarity and describing sounds rather than describing the physicality of it. And that's sort of why, like, the word stroke to me just like drives me insane, because it's like, what's the stroke for Mendelssohn for? It's like, well, Mendelssohn didn't write thinking about what your elbow's doing, you know what I mean? It's like the sound world. Like, a better question for me is, what is the dotted half note in Mendelssohn for? What does that sound like? What's the color for that? And then bringing quarter notes, eighth notes, whatever, out of that sound world. So you have a compass. Does that make sense?
yeah.
So I guess so if I take these kinds of gestures and then I have a sound to then decide how am I to devise a strategy to create a physical way to execute that sound in a relaxed and consistent way. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
In terms of like the decision-making stuff, in terms of just, I only bring this up because of you kind of hearing things as like, oh, it needs to be more off the string. And I think as you're describing to yourself, clarity is not always related to verticality. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So what you're hearing as a lack of clarity to me is about having more appropriate like point of contact, even when it's soft. So can we just explore like what does that opening look like when you're actually, you know what, maybe we'll do a better idea is can you just find your point of contact here? Okay. Okay, yeah. I don't know. And so can you think about the physical memory of that and sort of start in a very similar place? It doesn't need the exact same place, but in closer to that than where you originally started. I mean, to me, it's like very soft and very clear and sounds like a soft version of the loud stuff, which is really the thing. It's not, if you think about in the context of a round or in context of an orchestral, of a concert or something, the difference from measure 60 to 80 is still same guy, same year, same key. You know what I'm saying? Same instrument. So it's just like, you know, you want to have these things a little more related to each other from a timbre standpoint. So then you have to give yourself room to have other, you know, widen it out for different parts of your round. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Can you start the opening with the notes, 2/3 tempo-ish, and just feel that homogeneity? Okay, next, let me see. is finding a way to describe, this is a little bit what I see, is this motion, and it might come from like, yeah, it might come from the, like kind of maybe some pumping or something like that. But there are hinges and there are rocking motions that are really important to be utilized in the right hand. But that is one that's a little dangerous to me, or I'm trying to like kind of eradicate from my playing and take that mechanism, instead of it interacting down and up, that it's interacting around. Because that still is the same point in the hair, same amount of hair, and having the follow through kind of built into that stroke. Whereas now we're introducing variables that are impossible to recreate. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So how about like, are you starting it up or not? Okay, so can we just do like 3s on each number? This, it's your pinky, it feels a little, no, yeah, can you have the same stability that you have in your hand? It looks great. It's just that making sure there's nothing of it that is actively engaged. Can you feel that your bow and your arm are moving at the exact same speed, at the exact same time, in the same direction? It's way more smooth. I don't know, what do you notice? How are you gonna work on that? How are you gonna double check that those things are happening? Do you have a mirror? Do you have a mirror when you practice? Paul, what percentage of your time in front of a mirror do you think is spent like dead on, 12 o'clock?
I don't allow myself to go home without an hour and a half in front of a mirror. And I would say that's a minimum of 6 days a week.
And like, it sort of begs the question of how much of your practicing is not in front of the mirror.
I think of it this way. Most of us don't pick our nose in the mirror. Therefore, when we're focusing on something, there has to be a reason for it. And if you're standing in front of the mirror, you might actually look at it and see if all the things that Robin just said are actually happening. And if you tell yourself the truth about it, then you know, at least you have an idea of what to do with it. Is that?
I mean, exactly. I mean, I always feel like practicing is a little bit like an AA meeting, where like the first step is like you're alone in the room. Like, my name's Robin Kesselman, and my bow twists when I play Nelson Ford. These 8 hours. So you're like, okay, thank you. And like you sit down, and it's like, you know what I mean? It's like the first step is admitting that you have a problem. And we all have so many. I have like pages of Bass Player Anonymous, like humbling admissions that are just for me, and that's why you practice in a place where you have the freedom to experiment, explore, sound bad, not be performing. It's not a performance. You're not performing for yourself. You know, it's like whatever, all that kind of work. And then my question about the mirror stuff is, if the audience is the mirror, my work is either here or maybe like a 45. The only danger with this is like, then a lot of my practice is like I'm doing this, and I'm like, man, this is terrible. You know what I mean? And so you can still see kind of what you're looking at, but like look at this stuff dead on, and then like start seeing the way the tip is interacting with my hand and my arm. Do you see the amount of information that you have when you're side saddle versus like dead on?
Yeah, and then you get more of the counter relationship.
And you hold yourself, that plus sign that you're trying to create with some of these things, of like eradicating the sort of the scraping, man, that is like where you see all, it's just like you can't not see it. Does it make sense? Especially now that you kind of see it. So, did I get a 5 minute and I just totally didn't, yeah, was it like 7 minutes ago? Okay. So, we're gonna look, so we're looking at the timbral stuff. Think about, point of contact does not mean loud or soft. Point of contact is like clarity, resonance, balancing to where the note should be. Yeah, so that was, you're like the clamps, checks in the mail. No, my thing is that I want a development over that, and that's again, like what we were talking with Pat, is something that should be seen as well as heard. See what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
In terms of, yeah?
Okay, why don't you do
Okay, yeah, nice. So the development is happening. What I would love now is some, with the release of each one of those small gestures. So I feel you sustain all the way through that entire note. And what I'm trying to use is thinking about like, just the way that I create that taper from bow speed rather than weight. It's not softer is lighter, but same speed. That's a thing that like I'm trying to eradicate from my playing, and the great string players that I look up to are bowing much more with like fast, slow. Okay, way better. Now, can you, what I like is you're releasing the ends of those notes, right? Because you want that nice ring. What I see now is that you're now releasing past where you need to, where you're releasing off the string, which means you then have to. So for me, the way that note keeps releasing or keeps resonating is just releasing to the plane of the string at rest. Does it make sense? Like you can visualize, rather than weight, can you visualize depth?
Yeah.
And that you're in like a trough of contact, and then you're releasing to where you're still making that kind of no contact, no weight, no depth, like only partials. Does that make sense? Can you do once where you go, and then can you mimic the sort of aesthetic that I'm bringing to it? A little less intensity and a little more like fast low speed does not mean like kill mode, you know what I mean? Okay, now one more time. Yeah. So now turn it around. Yeah. Okay, now in context, a little down to down. I mean, to me, it sounds like 5 years of school. It just sounds so good. It sounds so different.
I think I'm a little older than that.
No, I mean 5 years of study. Yeah. It sounds great. It sounds great, man. Like I just think so. There's quality and release to the ends of these notes, but he has the consistency of still releasing, but not like totally disappearing into the air, which then requires a re-entry. Does that make sense? Any final? I gotta let you go. But do you have any last words? Man, you sound great.
Yeah, likewise. You want to?
Sorry. What's the point? It's super helpful. I really seriously, I just all of a sudden put my head up and realized where I came in.
Good idea. Yes. Yeah, this is the greatest thing on earth.
Abby's from Silver Spring, Maryland, and then she's been studying with Ira Gold, Peabody.
Oh, yes.
She's now continuing with Nina. Amazing to see her. So what do you play?
I'm gonna play the Brahms one, letter E.
Okay. Cool. Nice. Abby, talk to me. How'd that go?
That was not great for me.
What do you mean?
I'm a little nervous and is not quite in tune. And I've been working on, there's just so many things that I overthink. There's just so many details I want to get right. And yeah, I'm just a little shaky and cold. And
Oh, yeah, all the things, absolutely.
All the things,
Under
yeah,
duress, under
yeah.
duress. And you didn't even know you were doing this an hour ago, so thank you again for doing this. This is great. No, I understand. So I can relate so intensely to having so many detail first. And I have so many aspects that I want to incorporate that it is a little paralyzing. I totally feel that way. It's so hard to isolate. It's so hard for me to isolate my focus and certain things. I think can you try one more time, just so we're warmed up, and your Brahms parts for a little while are going to look like my Brahms parts in grad school, which was in the top right corner. It said 80%. If you just give 80% of you have a tremendous amount of power and energy, it'll serve the music beautifully. Does that make sense? You just dial it off 5-10% and just hit it one more time. right, so very specifically, what are the next things that you're looking to bring to this? What's sort of your hierarchy of priorities?
Right, so many things. I want my vibrato to be intentional and musical and not tight. I want the phrasing to be compelling. I want the ends of my notes to be ringing and round. I want the retakes to be fluid and not like tense.
Okay. Man,
Yeah.
all good things.
Yeah, I want it to feel joyful and not stressful and scary. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, let's look at, I want to look at one or two gestures and then bring a few other parts of it out of those. So one thing for me is, let's look at these sort of quarters, sforzatos that you're talking about in these, the retakes. One thing for me that is very helpful in all music, but in some ways, particularly in Brahms, is remove all articulation markings and sort of decide a foundation of length and tone, and then bring those things to the music. Does that make sense? Because sometimes if we think too much about all of the tremendous detail that's in this part, and that I know your teachers are like so expertly talking to you about, that sometimes we're creating this music articulations first, rather than like core and quality first, and then altering them. So sometimes it's like we don't know what we're altering yet, so we don't have to think. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, and that also provides a nice, like, kind of chill place for me to install some of these retakes, install some of these body mechanics, install the quality of the video or whatever, without the freneticness of like sforzano or staccato, whatever. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So how about okay. So for me, Brahms is squarer than Mozart, like the diagrams of these notes, meaning it's not. There is a longer duration before a taper, but that doesn't mean that there's no taper. Does that make sense? It's just a progression from like notes that sound like timpani hits to notes that have a bit of a longer floor to them. Does that make sense? But there is still like a finishing to them. Yeah. Yeah, okay. That to me is just much more attractive. And there's a higher quality of sound, and there's just a little more air in there. And then also, this energy that you now are sending out can be redirected to create the retake. So what I'm trying to get away from is the retake being this separate thing that is at the end of the note, and then or it's like add retake, and then like you put it there, and then all of a sudden you end up like that frog. It's like the gesture of that note has a retake in it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so more specifically, what that's going to look like is that the end of that note, the way you finish that, it's like, it's a curve that's returning, it's this part of a circle, and then the next part of that circle is the next note. Yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Can that, even though, like I sit at work, I stand at home, I stand with a pen, but I also have parts of my life that are seated, and it's still possible to direct these gestures from like your hip bone or your thigh or something like that, even when seated. Because you have a nice seated posture, like you're not totally stuck back, but that extra level of engagement will allow you the access of these gestures. Does that make sense? What I hear a little bit is such active engagement throughout the whole life of that note. It feels a little like that to me. So, one other way to think about it is, if you're making a taper with speed, the speed is going to slow down, right? And then if a faster bow speed, you have to add weight to it so that it doesn't hydroplane out. But that means that a slower bow speed, you can release the weight a little bit because it's not flying so fast. Does that make sense?
So slow and
Slow and light. Slow and light throughout towards the back third of that note. Yeah. One more time? Just do a few more times. You also have a little bit of it feels a little bit like you've got a gun to your head that somebody has told you must make it to the tip on that note. Like under all no matter what. It's like, you will make it to the tip. And it's just kind of like, can you let the note finish when it finishes? But still with the okay, let's walk it back a little bit. So if you think about these notes developing forward, it's also going to, you're going to see that. Can we make sure, it's all like every time, it's just, I'm liking it more and more. Can we make sure that every one of these gestures is balanced with, I love that you are committed to there being a framing of articulation on all of these notes, but can you trust that that's happening? Because I feel like now the upbows feel over-accented to the downbows. And that's getting me like, if you think about we're still in a 6/8 feel, it's like throwing elbows at me on the 3rd and 6th, 8th notes. Does that make sense? So articulation doesn't mean like complete consistency. Nice. That also, one other thing, those are 2 quarter notes, except one of them has a sforzando. To me, the one that has the sforzando note is much longer than the other one, and the sforzando doesn't mean longer note, it just means like more impact.
So should I shorten that one or lengthen?
Yeah, short note. Can you think of that sforzando being done with speed? It's still, can we use this as the model? Forget the 8th notes. Without a sforzando now, just even. Plenty. Nice. Now, what does it sound like if you add a sforzando to that? It's to me just, it's the speed, the impulse, like the. But it's not changing the length.
Of the bow.
Yeah, it's not changing the length of the note.
But to use more bow on
I mean, I will travel more distance just because there's more energy at the front of it. Much better. And what I like also is you're finishing this in a direction where even though you're not going on, it's very clear to me that there's a retake in that. And so that's like a great symptom of like when you notice yourself doing that, it means you're building the correct gesture. Does it make sense? Okay, so I like that a lot more. And then can we look at these separate 8 notes? Yeah. From anywhere before that. Maybe from this sequence. something that Brahms is always doing is messing with where the bar line is. So it's always these gestures are happening in different parts of the bar. So for the listener, you're like, where's the downbeat? And that's sort of what's happening. And then at a big sequential, at a big moment, then all of a sudden it locks in, and it's like this. It's a way to bring emphasis. So what he's showing you is also the destinations. It's just saying that like these are on downbeats. This looks like it would be on like a weaker beat, but what he's saying is like that's not the beat. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So can you think about it less as like this is exciting and more like, oh, it's just like pretend like it's a downbeat. Yeah? Okay, I like that a lot. It just sounds great. It just sounds nice. It's like when you're talking about like joy. It's so funny. Like I just love that you said that because it's not something that I would think of most people being like, I want to communicate joy. Like for my percent. But you absolutely should. Like it makes perfect sense. It's so great. It's also just surprising you said that given some parts of your presentation. And I think the joy comes from, the excitement comes from dialing those articulations off so then they don't negatively impact the quality of the body of your note. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Then the last thing I want to look at is that these separate eighth notes should have, our goal is that they are just divisions of the same density of sound as the long notes. So right now they feel lighter and kind of like less substantial. And so now instead of removing the sforzando or something, can we remove the staccato notes that we see, the staccato markers in here? Yeah. Better. So think about like, so. We can start with the dotted chord notes. Let's find those. Yeah, just like no vid. Let's just think about the right hand. Go back and toggle between those two. It's the picking up and putting down that I think is getting most of the little trouble. Can you just play one eighth note and just finish it without the picking up? And now without stopping the end of it. Yeah. I'm looking for substance, not necessarily volume. I'm probably going to do it. Sure. It's my fault. That's great. Okay, so the biggest thing about that I need you to feel the tension. Do you think about which side of the string you're playing on at all?
Yeah.
So that, I don't see you interacting with, the way you interact with the other strings, I don't always see you in the E string. Do you know what I mean by the sides of the string? So I want to, before you've played that note, I can tell whether it's going to work or not, because there should be a load and then a release through it. So the note is actually the release of something. It's not the creation of something. Does that make sense? So can you just go and then don't play it, but I want to see it. But so yeah, great. The only thing is to remember is loading it does not mean like the wiggle effect. Because if you do this, what you're doing is like, you're like, yeah, there's still a string there. Like, you know, because you're going load, unload, load, unload, load. And what I'm saying is much with more intention and more stillness. Load, one load. But don't play it, sorry. Okay, you see the wiggle? Yeah, exactly. No, but exactly. Do you feel the tension?
Yeah.
It's like I don't even need to hear it,
Okay.
but I can hear it. You want to play it? Just play the flick. Okay. Now, can you, once you pitch through that, can you then, as you are sent, can you release it and just ride it? Pitch it and ride it? Yeah, what I'm trying to get away from is that same energy that you are putting in, then sustaining through it. Whereas it should be, it's already sent through. Do it once on a download, just to feel that it's more. With the same load up. Okay? Yeah. Do it as a shorter note. Okay, it's better. Like, there's still like a little bit of staying active after you pitch through it, but the loading of it is really great. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So do you see how you're going to now bring that quality of eighth notes through the entire passage? I don't want to hear, those sound like different things to me. Should know this better. So it's like regardless of the length, there's still core and depth. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But in general, think less about the articulations, more about finding a beautiful intentional and like diagram, you know what I mean by the diagram of a note? Yeah. What I hear from you is a lot of rectangle and a lot of real hard accents. Does it make sense? So it's like, it's great. You have more articulation than you will ever need. And so you can just think like it's going to be like thinking less, still grounds, not Pulcinella or something, you know, it's great. So just think about like, if there's no Haydn or Bach orchestral suite on a list, then Beethoven is the second earliest composer we're going to play. And that probably means Brahms might be the third earliest composer, you know what I'm saying? So just orient things that direction. Then thinking about like how close Beethoven is to Tchaikovsky, like think about how close Beethoven is to Haydn, Mozart. Does that make sense? Just in terms of looking at the spread of music history. Do you have any final questions? I need to let you go.
Vibrato tips?
Oh, vibrato. Do we go to 5:30? Is there somebody else playing? Or is this? Are we good? Oh, so we got. The only thing I would say is. Our vibrato should always be shadowing or serving the gesture of the right hand, not the other way. So that could be in like a few different contexts. If it's in, I don't know, Bottesini or something, maybe it's as something develops, they both develop. And similarly here, that's sort of in a linear horizontal context, whereas this is more in like vertical harmonies and articulations. Does that make sense? So the vibrato, when you do use it, which should be intentional, and you can have a passage that sounds like it has vibrato, but it doesn't mean there's vibrato here. No, it's not an attractive sound for me personally. But when we think about the vibrato shadowing, and not just shadowing, it's not the right, like serving and kind of amplifying the gesture of the right hand. What that means in an articulation context is, if there's an accent in the right hand, then that same diagram should be here. sustain, that I don't think there should be total sustain here and taper and decay here. They should be like the same. Does that make sense? So this is again in the category of like things that if we want that tool in our toolbox, we should like practice it out of context. Like by the time it really goes with anything, but by the time I'm bringing something, I mean anything, I mean, this is just, yeah, let's just say this. By the time I'm bringing that nugget back to this piece, it's like kind of something I can already do. Like all the working to build that skill happens in so do you see that like the bow speed is also tapering? And that, and this might be a thing where maybe you just decide the unaccented or unsword sounded chord notes don't need vibrato. But to me, nobody would watch me play that and be like, man, Robin's like never vibrates, like it's weird, you know? Like it's about the passive sounding vibrated. Yeah, yeah. It doesn't have an accent, but I do think it's not a. That seems odd to me. So I wasn't playing right, but it wasn't. It's just that it has a simpler shape. There isn't that big bloom to it, but it's not like a pseudo piano. Does that make sense? Do you want to just try a little bit? Don't worry about the piece. Just I want to hear like a. Can you just shadow? Can you play this sense of it? Okay. Now can you mimic that? Yeah. I mean, to me, like plenty. I just think there are. In orchestral music, we're providing a rhythmic and harmonic foundation. We are not playing with this.